So I wanted to work on a video that would be quicker and easier to get out than the project I have been working on since the last video. You know, the Mega Man anime. If you haven't seen it, it'll be in the cards up here. Now, this new video has involved me trying to get a lot of games together, and it has taken a very long time. So I asked my fiance what video she thought I should do in the meantime, and when I told her about one of the possible games that would be in this video, she urged me to do it. So here we are with 10 games for people who like Zelda 2. Of course, I can only give games that feel closely related in my own opinion. Some of these games may not remind you of Zelda 2, but in the comments down below, tell me some that do. If there's a lot more, I might make a sequel to this video. The only thing that will decide the order of this list is how similar the game is to Zelda 2. To research this video, I went to one of those huge compilations that show gameplay from every single NES game released. It was about 3 hours, and I found a handful of games in the video that seemed reminiscent and gave them a try. The gameplay I'll show for each one will mostly be from early in the game. That way, if you decide you want to play them, you can experience them fresh. So, without further ado, Koryu Densetsu Vilgust, or for us American speakers, the Armed Dragon Fantasy Vilgust. Now, I'm sure the first thing you will notice based on the name is that this game was not released in America, but the gameplay is in English, and that's because you can find English ROMs for all of the games I'm going to talk about today online. So you'll be able to play them and enjoy them if you're American like me. It was developed in a collaborative effort between Plex and Tosei, I believe that's how you pronounce it, I could be wrong. The thing about this game, as I'm sure you've noticed, is that it looks very unlike Zelda 2's side-scrolling action. It does seem like the overall is pretty similar, but when you get into combat, it looks a lot closer to Dragon Quest, or maybe Final Fantasy. But it's a fake out. When you click attack, oh that's right, Zelda 2's combat. This game is a lot of fun, but the translators of the ROM I found seem to have taken some liberties, especially with the text you get when you want to fight. Although it's Japan, I guess that could just be what it said. Other than that, it's graphically very impressive. It's a lot of fun, and even has multiple playable characters as the game goes on. This one is obviously the least like Zelda 2, but as we go, things should start to look more familiar. The Swordmaster. This game actually did come out in America, and it is really fun. It was developed by Activision. Much like just about every single NES game, it's pretty hard. The main difference between Link's combat and the Knight's and Swordmaster is that he always faces the enemy, so it actually makes it easier to fight. You can back away and slash forward. The character feels cool and it's a lot of fun to play. The graphics are great, but this is more of a linear arcade game, whereas Zelda 2 is more open and gives you control of where you go and win. I do highly recommend this game though, as it is a blast, and I also highly recommend, with all of these games, hitting different directions while you slash to see if you'll do something different, because this game definitely did. Frankenstein, The Monster Returns. This next game also came out in America, and it is also pretty freaking fun. It was developed by Bandai. By default, you fight hand-to-hand, but when you kill your enemies, they can drop weapons, and you can grab them to use instead. This game has interesting mechanics and makes for a cool experience. The graphics are great, yet again. Something I found out while fighting the first difficult enemy was that you can actually do a jump kick by hitting jump again in the air, which is actually a neat mechanic that's implemented well and not obtrusive. It's a lot of fun to see if the enemies will drop a weapon or an item you can use. Unfortunately, if you're a Lectiophile. Okay, well, that's weird. That's what it says. Then you will be disappointed to learn that this game refers to the monster as Frankenstein and not Frankenstein's monster. For those who haven't read the book or are just generally unaware, the creator is Frankenstein and the monster is his creation, aka not Frankenstein. It's a great book, but not what you would actually expect. I highly recommend it. This game is, again, more arcadey and not quite what we're looking for, but it's still a lot of fun, if a little inaccurate. Or a lot inaccurate. Chesterfield. This game is a lot more in line with the sort of thing we're trying to find. Developed by Vic Tokai, the game is similar combat like the rest of them, but actually adds a twist. Outside of being able to stab up, which Link can do, you can also stab at an angle, which actually you can do in Swordmaster, I just didn't know it when I was writing the script. Chesterfield was actually another game developed in Japan. My first impression of the game is that it was just way too hard, but after giving it some more time, I really enjoy it. The game is still linear like the last two, but it really goes a long way towards scratching the Zelda 2 itch. Also, this thing is totally ridiculous, and I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, my good time was cut short because in level 2 I got stuck in a wall and had to play it all again. The game is pretty silly, but it opens with a lot of story, so it's a good thing the translation that I found is solid. Getsufumadin. This game is an oddity. From what I could try, the gameplay was a lot of fun, but the thing is I couldn't easily get it to emulate. Developed by Konami and again released exclusively in Japan, the combat is really solid and the animations are good. But it apparently uses a memory mapping technique that some emulators aren't compatible with, so this one seems like a real hassle to run. The only way I could play was with this sort of choppy mess you see. The gameplay is a lot more like The Adventure of Link though, as you do get a top-down map that transitions into levels. This one is a lot of fun, but I still have a difficult time recommending it because of the weirdness. Biosenshi Dan, or the Biological Warrior Dan, or whatever, I don't remember what it's called. This game finally really breaks the linear mold and becomes more open. Developed by Jellicoe, it has a crazy story about going back in time to kill aliens and save the world. It's pretty ridiculous, but it's also pretty good fun. Apparently, the game gets really hard as it goes on though. Like Zelda 2, it doesn't even point you in a direction really, so you sort of just have to figure it out. This game is a little different in that instead of just crouching when you press down, Dan starts crawling. This is incorporated into the level design, making for a more claustrophobic experience, but you have to press up to get up again instead of just crouching and popping up. The entire game seems to take place inside of this alien structure and reminds me somewhat of Metroid 2's art direction. As far as it goes, the game is interesting and has fun graphics with decent gameplay. It is definitely starting to touch more of the elements of Zelda 2. Rambo. For those of you who don't know, yes, there was a Rambo game on the NES that modeled itself after Zelda 2. Why? Nobody's figured that part out yet. Developed by a new company called Pack-In Video. This is ridiculous in every single way. Look at the art for Sylvester Stallone. It's like a photograph. The game is confusing in a lot of ways and doesn't explain itself well at all, although a lot of these are non-linear and don't, this one seems to be a little messier in execution. Lots of people think this game is horrible. From what I played, other than the ridiculous art direction, it's mostly inoffensive. It isn't exactly good, but it is by no means as bad as some people would say. I don't recommend it, but if you really want to play a Zelda 2 style game and you've already tried all the other games, then I mean, I don't know, why not? Debius Legendary Space-Time Hero. This game is neat! It was developed by Namco and it feels like a combination of Zelda 2 and Simon's Quest. There's a day-night cycle and it actually affects who is in the area. When night comes, the townspeople run to their homes and monsters come. When dawn hits, the monsters bail and the people come out. They probably shouldn't though, because for whatever reason you can actually kill the townspeople, which is unlike any of the other games on this list. It's a very odd decision and it's kinda hilarious. The menu system at the bottom of the screen reminds me a lot of Maniac Mansion, and different equipment actually affects your sprite, which is pretty cool for the NES. The final boss reminds me a lot of the Misfortune.gb demon, so that is definitely a thing. The game can be frustrating and labyrinthian, but it's really nothing compared to the last two. Now this was really tough and I deliberated for a very long time on the next two, but I finally settled on my decision and I'm sticking with it. Fazanadu. This game is a total classic, developed by Hudson Soft. I recommend it to anyone who loves The Adventure of Link and wants more. This game has great graphics and is a blast to play. It actually was released in America and it's super cheap to pick up. You have freedom of exploration and the experience feels like it is yours. You arrive at this town and are quickly sent out by the king as their only hope. He loads you up with 1,500 coins and tells you to get ready for your journey. This game is fun and has a cool narrative. The gameplay feels great and smooth. I enjoy this game immensely and would recommend it to all retro lovers. It's really dark, but it adds to the desolate feeling of the world. It just feels like it needs your help. It's a great game and it's, again, super cheap. If you're gonna play it though, then you should use save states. Its passwords are just impossible to make out. Anyone familiar with retro games sees what the last game was and immediately knows what number one would be. It was going to be one or the other after all. Battle of Olympus. This game is in every way a spiritual successor to The Adventure of Link, developed by a company called Infinity. The gameplay feels identical, and the game feels like a great extension of what came before. I played this game all the way through in just about 2 sittings because I was having so much fun with it. Unfortunately, this game gets pretty difficult near the end, but if you're a fan of Zelda II, you are used to it, I'm sure. You collect different items that are actually fairly reminiscent of the items from Zelda I. This game doesn't really go to an overworld map, but instead you just travel everywhere on foot in a side-scrolling view. This actually helps the game to not break immersion. It's a must for fans of Link's most hated adventure. These last 2 games are nearly interchangeable, but if I had to say, I would give number 1 to Battle of Olympus. So, when I looked this question up for my own sake, I didn't find very diverse results. I knew that there had to be more games that captured the same idea, so I did the research. Of course, with over 1,000 games on the NES, it's not like I can say every single game that feels similar to Zelda II, and on top of that, I can only give my opinion. Despite all of that, I hope I introduce you to some new games and you'll give some of them a try. Except, maybe Rambo. Just don't play Rambo. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Jesus loves you, so do I. Tune in next time, and goodbye. Hopefully the next video will actually be the one I've been working on.